Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight for a celebration of Reading 2022, Life, Liberty, Literacy. We ask that you please take your seats, silence your cell phones, and enjoy beverages and hors d'oeuvres. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight for a celebration of Reading 2022, Life, Liberty, Literacy. We ask that you please take your seats, silence your cell phones, and enjoy beverages and hors d'oeuvres. Ladies and gentlemen, the program will begin momentarily. Thank you for remaining in your seats for the duration of tonight's program. as our special event is being filmed by our media partners at KPRC2 for television broadcast. Now, please direct your attention to the video screens.
Dearest Gani, when we lost you, we lost one of the greats. You are our family's rock, the glue that held us together. I hope you know in your final days how many people prayed for you, how many people told me they loved you. It was like that my whole life. People stopped me everywhere, in airports, on the street, and declared their love for you. It always felt good. We didn't mind sharing you with the world. We called you the Enforcer. It was because you were a force and you wrote the rules. Your rules were simple. Treat everyone equally. Don't look down on anyone. Use your voices for good. Read all the great books. Oh, how I'll miss sharing books with you. I will never forget when Barbara and I, as 7-year-olds, snuck into the bowling alley of the White House and ordered presidential peanut butter sandwiches. We couldn't wait for someone to deliver what was sure to be the fanciest sandwich of our lives. Then you opened the door, scolding us, telling us under no circumstances could we order food in the White House again. This was not a hotel. You taught us humility and grace. You and Gampy embodied unconditional love. At our wedding, Henry and I asked you to read because we so hoped we could emulate your love story. Your love letters will be passed down to my girls so they know what true devotion looks like. You always said humor helps. Our nights spent around the dinner table in Maine laughing at old family stories were made all the better because of your laugh. And humor was necessary because of summers you spent surrounded by 17 raucous grandkids in Kennebunkport. Grandkids who filled the hot tub with soap, creating a giant bubble bath. Rowdy kids who loved doing cannonballs over your head while you peacefully swam laps. From you, Gani, I've learned the gift of uniqueness and authenticity, from wearing mix-matched keds to your signature pearls and snow-white hair. You taught us that humor, wit, and grace are the best accessories, and that worrying too much about your looks and your own words is boring. Words matter. Kindness matters. Looks fade. One of your final emails to me was simple and true. The subject line read, you. In the body of the email you wrote, I am watching you. I love you, Gani. Well, Gani, we have spent our lives watching you. Your words inspired us, your actions an example to follow. We watched as you held babies living with HIV to dispel the stigma, as you championed literacy across our country, as you held Gampy's hand. You always said that you were one of the luckiest women to ever live, but Gans, I am filled with gratitude because you were ours. We are the lucky ones. You did things on your own terms up until the very end, and now you are reunited with your little girl, Robin. She died so young. You called her your sweet angel in heaven, and though I never met her, her words are still today and forever will be a treasured part of our family. And so, Gani, we love you more than tongue can tell. Love, Jenna.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand as you are able and remain standing for the presentation of colors by the United States Navy Color Guard Houston. Quinn Win Lee, Keen Win Lee, Kessie Kittiyu, and Nua Kittiyu from Barbara Bush Elementary School will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Houston's own Dana Monique and the Ernest Walker Community Singers will sing America the Beautiful.
liberating stride, who's more than self, our country love, and mercy more than life. Oh, America, sweet America, God shed His grace on thee and crown thy God with brotherhood from sea to shining sea, from sea to shining sea, from sea to shining sea. America, you're beautiful. Forward, march.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your chairs for tonight's events and founders of the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation, Neil and Maria Bush.
Wow. Thank you, Dana, Monique, the Ernest Walker Singers, the U.S. Navy Color Guard, the Barbara Bush Elementary School students. If Mom and Dad were here tonight, they would surely be bursting with pride and be so moved. Thank you to each of you for coming. Welcome to our 28th celebration of reading. Thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for supporting my mom's literacy legacy.
We are so grateful to title sponsor Phillips 66, presenting sponsor Quanix Foundation, and all of the companies and individuals that have given so generously to help more people realize their fullest potential through the power of literacy. We have an amazing lineup of best-selling authors tonight, and we're so thankful for them giving freely of their time and talent to make this year's event the best ever.
Our theme this year is Life, Liberty, Literacy. Mom believed that literacy was essential to reaching one's fullest potential in life and to accessing the endless opportunities our country has to offer. Indeed, literacy is liberating. The Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation programs and the programs that we support address Houston's literacy crisis for the entire spectrum, from early childhood through grade school into adulthood. This year, we are highlighting work done with adults. Mom believed that when you help an adult learn to read, they in turn help their children to read, thus breaking the intergenerational cycle of low literacy.
Neil and I are excited that our foundation has teamed up with the National Barbara Bush Foundation for Family Literacy on a vital and strategic initiative that will benefit our community and establish a model for communities across the country. Please turn your attention to the video.
A startling 1 in 3 adults in Harris County is functionally illiterate. They lack the skills needed to fully engage in the workforce, participate in society, support their families, and reach their fullest potential in life. In 2021, the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation and the Mayor's Office for Adult Literacy spearheaded the development of Houston's Adult Literacy Blueprint, a first-ever citywide plan aimed at giving more adults a second chance at learning how to read and gaining the essential skills needed to thrive. One of the key strategies of the Blueprint is to expand programs offered by community-based adult education providers, like the Nova Academy for Adult Education at the Tejano Center for Community Concerns.
And this one bad.
The Tejano Center for Community Concerns, established 30 years ago, is located in Houston's East End. We serve the predominantly low-income community of Greater Harris County. Our Nova Academy for Adult Education provides courses in English as a second language, basic high school equivalency, and digital literacy. We also have advanced courses to help members of our community function effectively as parents, workers, and citizens in the United States. We are grateful and honored to partner with the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation. This partnership will help ensure we equip our learners with technology and provide scholarships that allow us to educate and empower more adults in our community.
I started taking class to learn English to get a better job and support my family. I was too afraid to ask for help, but my teacher at the Tejano Center are giving me support.
I am taking classes to improve my communication. I was excited to start my English lessons. My dream is to become a teacher.
I invite you to learn more about what we are doing to break the generational cycle of low literacy in our community, including our STAR Scholarship Program. Together, we can help more adults, like Raina and Nubia, have a brighter future and better life through the power of literacy.
To share more about our adult literacy efforts in Houston, please welcome the fabulous President and CEO of the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation, Dr. Julie Fink.
Last year, as a celebration of reading, the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation has achieved remarkable milestones. We distributed our 100,000th home library through our My Home Library program, opened the 12th George and Barbara Bush Family Place Library, expanded our Reading Roundup program to nearly 200 elementary schools, hit the streets with a third Curiosity Cruiser mobile library, and spearheaded the development of our city's first ever adult literacy blueprint. While we are proud of our accomplishments, there's much more to be done to make Houston a city filled with readers and fulfill Mrs. Bush's vision of literacy for all. With this in mind, tonight we are launching a new initiative called Success Through Adult Reading, or STAR for short. In partnership with an initial 5 community-based organizations, the goal of STAR is to bring adult literacy to the forefront and ensure that more adults have access to the courses that they need to learn English, earn a GED, acquire 21st century digital literacy skills, and develop core reading and writing competencies to have a brighter and better life for themselves and their families. To jumpstart the STAR program, we are excited and honored to announce that Phillips 66 has generously provided a lead gift of $50,000. Also, EOG Resources has committed to match up to $25,000 of your contributions made tonight. In addition, DeBoule Diamond and Jewelry has graciously gifted a stunning signature diamond and gold bangle bracelet valued at more than $15,000 for a first ever celebration of reading raffle, along with a special buy it now bow bracelet just in time for Mother's Day. Just saying. Our sincere gratitude to Greg Garland of Phillips 66 and his team, Ezra Jacob and Patricia Edwards of EOG Resources, and Dennis and Karen Boole for their incredible generosity. Thank you so much. They deserve another round of applause. Every $1,000 raised will provide an adult with a year-long scholarship. Many of you have already contributed, as evidenced by your star necklaces, but your support is deeply appreciated. If you haven't contributed or feel compelled and wish to increase your gift level, simply scan the QR code on your flyer at your table or stop one of our amazing staff members as they circulate the room following the finale. We will announce our winner of the raffle at 9:15. President George H.W. Bush said in his inaugural speech, "We can find meaning and reward by serving some higher purpose than ourselves, a shining purpose, the illumination of 1,000 points of light across a broad and peaceful sky." Tonight, we ask you to be a point of light, a star illuminator, by giving an adult a second chance to be empowered with the literacy skills that they will truly be used to transform their lives in unimaginable ways. Now, let's celebrate the power of reading and shine the light on the authors who enrich, inspire, educate, and enthrall us with their books. Our first author is no stranger to the New York Times bestsellers list. She's co-author of the Under Suspicion series with Mary Higgins Clark and author of more than a dozen standalone novels, including her most recent book, Find Me. Her books have been called gripping, riveting, and compelling. In addition to being an accomplished and award-winning writer, she teaches criminal law and serves as president of Mystery Writers of America. Please welcome Alifair Burke.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the hospitality of the Bush family and the foundation. It's an honor to be here as somebody who really does believe that the ability to read and write is critical at every age and every stage of life. For me personally, books have opened opportunities that I never would have dreamed of. I think a lot of people wonder, how did you know you were going to be a writer? When did you know? How did you do that? For me, I know some of my friends are like, they make it sound like they came out of the womb holding a book and a typewriter. Like, I always knew I was going to be a writer. I wasn't that kid. I wanted to be a telephone operator so that I'd watch those old movies with my mom, and like this, the curious telephone operator is always eavesdropping on phone calls, and that sounded pretty great to me. But we were a house filled with books. My father is a writer. He grew up in Houston. In fact, James Lee Burke, if you've heard of him, he's supposed to be pretty good. So that's my father. And then my mother, importantly, was a school librarian. And she would take me to the library every Saturday. We would also go to like a dollar movie and watch like Herbie and the Love Bug and, Bambi, and go to check out the clearance bins at Macy's, and then we would go to the library all day so I could get a new stack of books. And in retrospect, I realized I was the fourth of four kids and the youngest by far. So I think she was being very strategic. I don't know what my three siblings were doing, running around pulling off robberies or something, but I was the one who needed caretaking, and it was an inexpensive way to kind of get me out of the house all day so that my dad could write, away from the chaos of and there was no blue stuff in Wichita, Kansas, so I wasn't real happy about that. The other thing I knew was that Wichita, Kansas was very, very far away from Key West, Florida, where Andy Gibb lived, and Andy Gibb was supposed to be my husband, and how is he going to marry me if I live all the way in Wichita, Kansas? So that was 2 strikes against Kansas. So I checked with all my friends' parents to see if they could just finish raising me. There was only about 10 years left. I didn't eat that much, and they were like, no, nobody wanted to adopt me. So off to Kansas we go, and I was not happy about it. And we're literally still unpacking the moving boxes, and the local news announces that there's a serial killer in Wichita, Kansas, that he's killed 7 people. They have no idea who he is. He calls and leaves taunting messages about how he's going to get away with all of it and kill everybody. And they show a map, those creepy maps with red dots of where he's killing all the people. And by then I knew where Wichita, Kansas was, and our house was right in the middle. And I looked at my parents like, yeah, good life decisions you're making here. Thanks. Thanks for moving me here, guys. So back to books. So a funny thing happened. The serial killer, by the way, is called BTK. I don't know if you know what that stands for. It's not good. But we grew up in a very funny way. I shouldn't say not funny, peculiar. So they didn't find this guy for 30 years, if you know anything about this case. But if you grew up in Wichita, Kansas, like I unfortunately did, you grow up in a very weird way. We would check the phone lines. Like, it was just habitual. When you came home, you would check the phone line, back when we all had landlines, to make sure there was a dial tone, because they thought that he cut the phone lines so that you couldn't call for help. Old homes in Wichita still to this day have bolts, like multiple bolts on the basement doors, because they thought that he broke in through the basement and got in that way. I was telling my husband the other day, like, I'm still creeped out when I've got to go down in the basement to do the laundry. It's also a way to get him to do the laundry. But I don't like basements. So it was kind of a strange way to grow up. And then back to books, a funny thing happened. On those Saturday trips to the library, I suddenly wanted to read mystery novels. My poor mom, like the curator of the books, like, try to find age-appropriate mystery novels, for an 8 to 10-year-old. So it was Encyclopedia Brown and Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys, and I eventually graduated to, Agatha Christie and Mary Higgins Clark. And my mom's like, what is this kid who only wants to read mystery novels? She's trying to give me other things. And I'm like, no, mystery novels. And when I look back on it now, do some of you read mystery novels? If you don't, this is going to be so boring for you. Okay. So if you like people say, like, how come people like crime novels? I have this theory. It's the middle of the book, everything feels chaotic and super scary and creepy, and it feels like you're never going to figure out what's going on. But there's this implicit promise that a crime writer makes to the reader that it's not necessarily going to be a happy ending or a perfect ending. It might not even look like justice, but order will be restored, right? The chaos will stop. There'll be some kind of conclusion, and you'll get the answers, right? The mystery gets solved. And I think I was craving in those books the answers that I wasn't getting in real life, or the justice that would take, it took them 30 years to get this guy. And I think those books were giving me something I was missing in real life. And I do now read occasionally things that are not about murder, even though my husband says, do we always have to watch stuff about murder? I'm like, if you met me, yeah, maybe. But books have taken me to cultures I would never know about. It teaches you empathy by getting into the experiences and thoughts of people very unlike yourself. And so for me, books have opened up a lot of horizons. But I never thought I would be a writer. I was the only kid in my family who was really into books, and I think my dad he made a critical mistake. He shouldn't have told me what he was thinking, but he kept telling me over and over and over again, oh, finally, one of my kids is into books. You're going to be a writer. You're going to be a writer, I can tell. And the more he told me I wanted to be a writer, most people who want to be writers, their parents are like, what, are you crazy? Go be a doctor, go be a lawyer. My dad said, go be a writer, so I became a lawyer. But I was a lawyer who was obsessed with crime and still obsessed with reading. And I worked at the DA's office, more crime stuff, obviously. And I was reading all these mystery novels. And if you read a lot of mystery novels, one thing you may have noticed is whenever a district attorney shows up, you may as well skip the next 3 pages because it gets really boring and they say hearsay, you need a warrant. They're not very much fun on the page. And meanwhile, I was working in this courthouse where I thought my job was really interesting, and I felt like I was learning a lot about the way police talk to each other versus the way they talk to judges versus how they treat witnesses. And the real stuff at the DA's office doesn't happen in the courtroom. It happens in the hallway, right? It's those things that really count. So I thought, I'm going to write a book with a DA as the main character. I'll just have my one little book. By then I was a law professor. Professor Burke will have the book, on her shelf, like, I wrote a novel one time. And I was lucky enough that the editors who wanted it, which was great. But my agent called me and said, good news, people are interested, but they want to know if it's a series. And this is back when everybody wanted. And I said, well, I'm no dummy. I said, do they want it to be a series? And they're like, yeah, I think they're assuming it's a series. And I said, oh, good, because I totally planned it that way. And I can definitely write another book again in a year, even though this took me 4 years. And I thought, okay, I can do it. I can do it one more time. And then they said, you want another 2-book contract? And I said, I can probably keep doing this. So that was 19 years ago and 20 books ago. And every time, thank you. I wasn't actually fishing for tons of applause, but I'll take it. But every time I sign again, and at some point my husband pointed out, I used to tell people, oh, what do you do? I would say I was a law professor because then they would stop talking to me on the airplane. But now he goes, you finally tell people you're a writer. You finally have accepted the fact that you are a professional working writer. I'm like, yes, I think I have gotten past my imposter syndrome. I think I understand that now. But I would never have believed that this idea I had of maybe I'll write my one story would lead me to the life I've had. My very first book event was at Murder by the Book here in Houston, where my grandmother, bless her heart, would always come every year to see me until she was 101 years old. So that was always very special to come here first. I wound up co-authoring 6 books with Mary Higgins Clark, which 12-year-old me never would have believed. And books, whether I'm reading them or writing them, just continue to open my world in ways I never could have dreamed of in Wichita, Kansas, a million years ago. So thank you so much for supporting organizations like the Bush Literacy Foundation, who make those opportunities available for more people by making sure that they're proficient in reading and writing. And have an excellent night.
We're going to do the chalk conveyor belt scene.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. You're going to do that with me, right?
No.
This is the part. Ready? Mrs. Bush, eat all the chocolate with me. Here we go. Together. Let's do it. This is going to be, by the way, we're like Lucy and Ethel. Me and you right now, don't you think?
Very much.
Like Tina and Amy.
Oh, yeah.
Butch and Sundance.
Yeah.
Skipper and Gilligan. Forrest Gump and Jenny.
Every day, America turned to see what Lucy was up to. They wanted to see what new trouble I'd get into. And they wanted to see who else would show up. We had famous guest stars like Harpo Marx and Superman. That's right, Superman.
I love Superman. He's my favorite.
Your mouth is full.
Of chocolate.
Between 1952 and 1953, though the first TV bosses said no one would be interested, 2 out of 3 households with TV sets were watching I Love Lucy on Monday night. What was the secret of the show's success?
There's so much chocolate in my mouth, you have no idea.
Yes, I do. Perfect. Are you a nut? Basically.
Please welcome the only author who has reached the #1 New York Times bestsellers list in 5 different genres, a great Bush family friend, Mr. Brad Meltzer.
I know it's hard to believe that we did that in one take. And I ate so many chocolates that night, right there, that I felt like I could do 1,000 pull-ups because I was full with sugar. First of all, I will tell you that the last time I was here in Houston with the Bush family was at President Bush's funeral. And as someone who's buried both of his parents, someone told me, they said, don't just go to the funerals, go to the good things. And it's why I'm here tonight. And I think this is one of the good things, and I love that we're all together again. And just a huge thank you to the Bush family and to Julie and everyone that puts on this incredible event. I've been to so many of them. I think I have the record because I did the count, and I've been to 1 million of these. So that's the best part. I'll tell you that the book they wanted me to talk about is The Lightning Rod. It's my newest thriller. And I found the main character, and I stand here today because President and Mrs. Bush used to love my thrillers, and they would write me letters. And every time a new one would come out, they would write me a letter telling me how good it was. And I knew it was good because even Mrs. Bush didn't even tell me how bad it was. And I love no criticism. And when I wrote The Lightning Rod, I was looking for that main character. And the main character, I was in this warehouse, a government warehouse, filled with art. And I was like, why does the U.S. Army, why does the government have all this fancy art? And they explained to me, and this is true, that since World War I, the U.S. Army has had a painter on staff who paints disasters as they happen. And I said, and from storming the beaches of Normandy to Vietnam to 9/11, and I said, you're telling me everyone else is racing in with guns blazing, and you got someone who's racing in with a paintbrush in their pockets. That guy sounds crazy. I want to meet him. I got to meet him. And they said, you mean her. You want to meet her. And that's where Nola, who is the lightning rod because she attracts so much danger, came from. And that's where the star of the book came from. And everyone loves her because she's like this new girl with the dragon tattoo. But for me, what I always write about, and I start with, are my own fears. And so in the opening scene of the book, you have a character who hands his car keys over to a valet at a fancy restaurant. And the valet takes the car, but instead of parking the car, he takes the little button, hits the little button on the steering wheel for the GPS, and he says the magic words, go home. Now all of you are thinking about your car right now, aren't you? Hope you like the valets out there. And the valet starts riding to the guy's home. He's got his car keys, got his house keys on there too, because he's going to rob him. This is a robbery. And when the valet walks into the man's house, he sees that there's another man waiting there with a gun, because this isn't a robbery at all, it's a trap. And when his body goes to our hero, something is found on the body that no one's meant to see. It leads to one of the government's most closely guarded secrets. And I just ruined chapter 1 of The Lightning Rod for you. That is chapter 1. It's a disaster, right? And the thing is, there's only 2 chapters in the book. Everyone dies. That's really... But what I want to talk about is, obviously, what I think the Bushes, what President and Mrs. Bush used to love about the books is the research. And I've researched books with them for many years. And in this book, I found out, and this is true, the government has 12 top-secret warehouses hidden all across the country to deal with bioterror attacks, whether it's smallpox or anthrax or anything else. And it means that if there's an attack in New York, in California, here in Houston, within hours, the government will have antidotes right here. And I said, you're telling me that the government has secret warehouses hidden all across the country, nobody knows what's inside them, nobody knows where they are, and nobody can go inside? I want to go inside there. And so when you get to the end of the book, and I won't ruin the end of the book, it's a whodunit, and when you read that ending and you see whodunit, it takes place in one of these warehouses. But I will also tell you that what you see in the warehouse, I didn't make up. What you see there is really there. And that, to me, is the fun. So when I wanted to figure out, I asked a friend of mine who is one of the top people, used to be one of the top people in one of the great security organizations for our country. And I said to him, how do we send secret emails to each other anymore? When everyone can read our email, everyone knows all of our secrets now. And he said, you're right. He said, the moment you hit send, I don't care if you use WhatsApp, he said to me, I don't care if you use Signal, the moment you hit send on your email, anyone who has a good de-encryption program can take what you wrote and find it and can take it apart. And he said, but here's what you're going to do, Brad. Here's how you're going to get around it. I want you to open a Hotmail account. And in that Hotmail account, I want you to write an email to me, but don't hit send. Instead, I want you to hit save drafts. And then you're going to give me the login to your email at that Hotmail account. I'm going to go into your account. I'm going to open up the drafts folder, and now I'm going to see that email you wrote to me. I'm going to delete it. I'm going to write back something to you, and I'm going to hit save draft. And now you and I are having a conversation back and forth, and nobody will ever see it. Nothing's been sent into cyberspace. And it's a great idea, right? Until General David Petraeus used that idea that's in the lightning rod to cheat on his wife with his mistress. And I said to my buddy, I'm like, that's the idea you gave me. You can't give that to him. How'd you give that? And he goes, I know. I'll give you a better one. So do not cheat on your spouses when you read this book. I'm going to tell you right now, that is not what you're here to learn. But what you see in the book, I didn't make up either. And that's obviously the fun of the book. But what I also came to talk about, and they asked me to talk about, and this is going to be the best transition because I just talk about murder. So let's talk about your children and children's books. Because I also write children's books, and I have kids. And yes, I murder people all day long like Alifair. That is what we do. We truly murder people all day long. We're really fun at parties. But I had kids, and I wanted to give my kids better heroes to look up to. I wanted to give my kids heroes of kindness and compassion and perseverance, humility. Remember when humility was a great American value? I learned it from this family right here. And we've lost it. We need to get it back again. So I started with I am Amelia Earhart. We did I am Abraham Lincoln. I am Rosa Parks. I am Albert Einstein. My son loves sports. I said, forget a millionaire overpaid athlete. Here's a real hero. I did I am Jackie Robinson for him. And what I love is that people use our books today to fight back against the cynicism they see. They've told us that we have, with 5 million books in print now, that no one is educating more kids about histories and the values of our heroes than we are in the Ordinary People Change the World series. And no, I appreciate that. But what I want to talk about is the 2 newest heroes, because the books have never been about history. And you'll see here's I am Muhammad Ali, which is on the back of every book we always put the moral lesson. So on the back of I am Amelia Earhart, it says, I know no bounds. On the back of I am Abraham Lincoln, it says, I will speak my mind and speak for others. And on the back of I am Muhammad Ali, it says, I will always fight for what I believe. I want my daughter to have that lesson. I want my sons to have that lesson, to fight for what they believe, especially now in America. And the book that I brought to end with is this one, I am Malala Yousafzai. And I brought her because she reminds me so much of Mrs. Bush. And you'll see why. And Malala, when she's a little girl, the Taliban says they don't want her to learn and to read. They don't want her to get educated. Girls cannot be educated where she's growing up. They're terrified that if she gets educated, she will become strong and powerful. And they're absolutely right. And that's, of course, what she does. And when they shoot her, and they literally try to silence her, they want her to be quiet. She will not be quiet. And I'm going to read you this very short passage, and I want you, when I read this, this is what it says in I am Malala Yousafzai, but I want you to think about Barbara Bush for a moment. I want you to think of her as I read this. It says, I'm an ordinary girl whose life was transformed by teachers and learning. There are millions of others who need similar help. That's why I will not be quiet. The world doesn't change unless you speak up. Use your voice. Help those who need it. As I said at the United Nations, we must believe in the power and the strength of our words. Our words can change the world. Let us pick up our books and our pens. They are our most powerful weapons. I am Malala Yousafzai, and I know that education helps us all soar. And I'll leave you with this final story. When President Bush, right before he passed away, what no one knew is that they were bringing in some of his favorite writers to read to him right before he died. And I was one of the ones who got the call. And I was in Kennebunkport at the time, and I went in, and the Secret Service said to me, listen, you're going to read for about 5-10 minutes. That's all. He's going to fall asleep. He's going to sleep right after that. I said, no problem. I'm honored to be here. And I knew this was the end. I could see just looking at him. And the Secret Service left. It was just myself and my wife, President Bush and his service dog, Sully. And I picked up a copy of one of my books that I had written called The First Conspiracy, about a secret plot to kill George Washington, a nonfiction book that he had so kindly helped blurb because he liked the book. I said, sir, you want to read this one? Because it was on his desk, and it was a dog-eared, like it had been read over and over. And he said, mm-hmm. You can't speak anymore. It's or And I start reading, and sure enough, 5-10 minutes in, he's fallen asleep, and I'm just honored to be there, so I'm just going to finish the chapter. And the chapter I brought to him was the scene where George Washington has the Declaration of Independence read to his troops for the very first time. And he's sleeping, and I get to those words we all know. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. And in that moment, President Bush's eyes pop open, and he's locked on me. It's like he's gotten an infusion from the Declaration itself, right? Truly, you know, those who knew him knew it works. And I get to the end of the chapter, and he's still wide awake. I say, "Sir, you want to read another chapter?" "Mm-hmm." Get to the end of that one. "You want to read another, sir?" "Mm-hmm." And another? "Mm-hmm." And instead of being there for 5 or 10 minutes, I'm there for an hour. And at the end of the hour, I, of course, say goodbye to him. I know I'm never going to see him again. I thank him for everything he's done for me for all these years as being one of the readers that he's just brought into his world and his universe. And to have that moment where I get to read about the very first president who at that point was the oldest living president of these United States is one of the great honors of my life. And I just want to publicly thank the Bush family. We never told that story for years, and then Gene Becker finally said, "I want you to tell the story. People need to hear it." So thank you to everyone there. I'll tell you, I'm going to end with this. This is how I'm going to pay you back. Is in a couple months, with the charity I write, we're going to break the Guinness Book of World Records for the biggest book that's ever been created. And the book is called, and again, where are we going to do it? It's here. It's going to be called I Am Texas. And I want you to show you, I'm going to show you in a moment, look who I put on the cover. There she is. So, this is going to be a fun one. I want to end with this. Thank you, Mrs. Bush. And if I didn't do this, she would kick me under the table later, because I know I've been to these. On your table are those little cards you scan with her picture on it. It's how you donate more money. You have phones. When you're eating, be the brave one. Pick up the card and pass it around to everyone around you and raise money for this amazing, wonderful organization and let them help more and more people. We are all part of that Bush legacy right now. Thank you very much for joining me here tonight.
To introduce our fabulous moderator and next authors, please welcome CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters Lone Star, my son, Pierce Bush.
Thank you, Dad. You kept it short, which was requested. Thank you. I've got kind of the task of the triple introduction tonight. First, we are incredibly grateful for all of you being here. But we are also really grateful for our incredible media partner, KPRC2, led by the great Jerry Martin, who will be broadcasting this event on April 30th. So if you like Brad's speech, you can watch it again. So to moderate our conversation with our next set of authors, please welcome the brand new KPRC2 news anchor at the 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. hour, Houston native Daniela Guzman. And then, as she's walking up, this dynamic author duo has teamed up and hit #1 on the bestseller list for their autobiography and companion children's book titled Sisters First. Just 2 days ago, they released a second book. I was actually at my house watching TV, and I heard like what seemed like a conversation at a family dinner table in Maine, because there on the Today Show was both of my cousins, Barbara and Jenna, because Barbara was the co-host that morning. But they've just released a second book called The Superpower Sisterhood. Here to discuss their new book and the family, please welcome my awesome cousins. NBC Today's Show co-host Jenna Bush Hager. All right. And Barbara Pierce Bush.
Hi, ladies. Hi. Hello to everybody.
Yeah, thank you all so much for being here tonight. It makes us so proud to be at an event that
Thank you.
And you brought your beautiful daughter, Mila.
Mila's
You saw her.
right
Hi,
there.
Mila. She's so cute. Ladies, how are you? Good this evening. How does it feel to be here on such a special night? We celebrate reading your grandma's passion and out your new book. Congratulations. Just 2 days ago you launched it. You must feel incredibly proud to do this together.
We
again.
are. I mean, it's really fun to have a co-author that's your sister because we get to travel together and go on book tour together. But it also, of course, is so meaningful for us to be here. And I'm going to weep because I already weeped when the video was playing. But we love books so much because our grandmother loved books so much. And when we were little, all of our cousins will remember this. I don't know why our parents let us do this. We would go to Maine for the summer without our parents. Our grandparents would watch us. And at our house, on the top floor in the attic, there were like 6 twin beds. And so we would all the cousins would sleep up there. It was so much fun. It was like a slumber party. But before bed, we had to do our summer reading. So we would all be lying in bed next to each other in the attic doing our summer reading with our grandmother. And it was just the coziest, safest feeling. And that is one of the many things that started our love of books.
Such great memories. Let's talk about the book, The Superpower Sisterhood. There it is up there, here. Ladies, I read this to my kids last night before we went to bed. They loved it. What a great, great story it is. And congratulations again. I wanted to ask you, how did you guys come up with the idea, the storyline, and that you wanted to write a children's book?
Well, this is our second children's book, and our first one was called Sisters First, which Barbara and I wrote really as a love letter to each other and to my little girls. Think sisterhood. I mean, first of all, we'll really lean into the sisterhood theme because we know how important it is. And so Superpower Sisterhood is about an only child, which is kind of a strange sisterhood book, but it's based off of our mom, who, although she never had a sibling, and her first memory is actually being at a hospital, looking through a plexiglass wall, seeing a baby that wasn't going to live, but wishing he would, so that she would have a little brother. And so even though she didn't have sisters, she had her best friends from Midland, Texas, who were still her sisters, who are still her little superpower sisterhood. They travel to a different national park every year and hike. They took us once, but they've never done it again. And this book is about how sisterhood in all of its forms, and cousins and friends and colleagues and strangers, makes us more powerful than we ever thought possible. And I always tell my girls that one voice can be only so loud, but when you have a chorus of your friends that feel empowered to make change, to do something, you can do a lot.
Absolutely. You know, as I was thinking about siblings as I was reading this and how different siblings are. You know, your girls are probably so different from each other. And many times, you know, people tend to label the kids and say, oh, she's a smart one, or he's the shy one, or, you know, or that's the most outgoing one. And being in the public eye, you might have felt that people have done that with you. Maybe have said, you're the outgoing one, or you're the shy one. But what role do you see yourself playing as sisters? And this is kind of a two-part question. And what's your superpower? And what role do you play? Does that superpower play in your sisterhood?
Well, the world might have compared us, but luckily our family really didn't, which is such a gift.
Mm-hmm. And I think when you're twins, people want one to be, you're supposed to be the inverse, it seems, is what people think. But actually, we love all the same things. Which
love a mystery.
Love
you too.
A mystery.
We love a mystery. That must be genetic.
It is genetic. We also love food and sleeping, kind of a lot of the basics.
Some exercise.
Some basics and exercise.
Yeah.
But I would say
just survival, basically survival.
I would say my sister's superpower, which has made my life incredibly joyful, because obviously since we're twins, I've never known the world without her. Her superpower is making other people laugh and bringing joy to other people. And that's meant that I've laughed for sadly 40 years now. And that's what she does every morning. She ended up in the perfect job. She's an entertainer, and every morning she brings joy to people that are watching her on the Today Show.
Barbara's superpower is that she has an enormous heart. It reminds me a little bit of Gampy's heart and her gentleness. She also, in the same way that Gampy did, uses that heart for action. And I'll tell you a perfect example. On one of this is our third book together now. So and it's the same thing every time, even though Barbara and I'll pretend it's not. We're like, we're not going to hit the New York Times bestseller list. What are we going to do? We're not going to hit it. And we always do. But anyway, if you want to go buy books this weekend, we'd appreciate it because Jimmy Fallon is really competitive. Right?
Yes, and we're going to beat
and
we want to beat him.
And we want to beat Jimmy Fallon for our grandmother, okay?
Do it.
Buy
the book for our grandmother.
Bush. Yes. Buy the book for Barbara Bush. And also donate while you do it, okay? But anyway, Barbara and I, on one of our book tours, we were in Atlanta and we were getting on an airplane. This was before COVID, but regardless, y'all know how unsafe it is to go against the tide of people getting on an airplane. Am I right?
Yes.
And she is very small, okay? She was very thin, and she was like, I need to go say hello to that man. And I was like, wait, Barbara, wait until everybody, no, I'm going right now. And I was like, Barbara, this is dangerous. There's like bags hitting her. She's walking past, weaving, and she goes up to Brian Stevenson, who's the head of the Equal Justice Initiative. And I don't hear what she says, but she thanks him. And then she quietly comes back and sits next to me. And I'm like, why did you just do that? And she said, well, he's done such incredible work. And I think that when you want to thank somebody for their service, you do it right in that moment. And that is what my sister is. And I'm crying too. But you didn't warn me about my letter. I heard somebody go, whose voice is that? And Barbara goes, Jenna's. I haven't seen that.
That was her voice on the screen.
Yeah. Yes,
earlier.
I wrote that letter, actually. And after Ganny died, I had strep throat. I don't know if you could tell. Only me probably could tell that. But because I had turned on the TV and I was just listening to other people talk about her. And it didn't feel right. And so since Ganny loved to write a letter, I wanted to write one to her.
Oh, it's beautiful. It was very, very moving and emotional. And I'm sure it was really difficult for you guys. I was watching you as you were watching it, and I could see how emotional you're getting. We should have brought Kleenex up here. We forgot it. Your book, back to the book, I love how Emma, the main character, as you mentioned, she doesn't have biological siblings, right? But she finds siblings or sisterhood in her neighbors when they start moving in. And so just the story of you not having to be a blood relative of somebody to consider them a sisterhood or to build that sort of strength within each other, I think is just awesome. And I thank you for that because it's something I try to tell my girls. I have 2 girls all the time. Like, you have each other, you have to support each other. And I used you guys as an example. You know, you're very busy, but you're still somehow connected. So I wanted to ask you, you guys are really busy. You have your careers, you know, you have your families, there's distance sometimes with traveling. How do you stay connected with each other and with the people that you love, with your family?
Well, we text message all the time.
Yeah, we just talk all the time.
We just are always connected.
By the telephone. We just make it a priority. I mean, I think, you know, we had both grandparents and parents who prioritized relationships. And in fact, we told this story the other night, which I think we need to just share with all of you, that for some reason, the night before our grandfather had a presidential debate versus Michael Dukakis. So the night before, which, you know, you would think would be a night of prep, maybe early to bed, for some reason, my parents went out. I don't know if it was a date night. I'm not sure what was so pressing to leave us with our grandparents.
To spend the night.
But they did.
Us.
They babysat us overnight. And am I not making that
We
clear?
were 7.
Okay. Overnight, we were 7 years old. And we've since been like, Mom and Dad, what was so important that you would leave us with our grandparents? But I think it perfectly describes who they were, that they put us first. And that family was their priority. So anyway, I'm sure my grandfather was trying to study or prep or whatever. And Barbara lost her white tiger. It's not a real tiger.
Your stuffed animal, your favorite?
Her favorite stuffed animal.
His name is Spiky.
And yes, she still has Spiky in Brooklyn, New York. But anyway, she lost Spiky, and I ran to Gampy and I said, Gampy, Barbara cannot sleep without Spiky.
Oh, man.
and we have got to go find Spikey. So my grandpa finished whatever he was doing, went out with Secret Servicemen and flashlights to search the vice president's house, where there was many places. It's not like our apartment where there's one or two places that Mila's animal alley could be, and searched until he could no longer look anymore for Allie. And I think that perfectly describes their priorities. So I think when your priorities are really set in family and friends,
you make time. Did you find him?
We found Spikey the next
I
day.
need to
Spikey
know.
was behind a curtain where we were playing house.
Yes.
Okay.
But we just had great models
Right.
in our parents and our grandparents
course,
that showed us what priorities matter. And we always felt their presence, and we always felt, I mean, I think every one of our grandparents' grandkids think they were the favorite.
Yeah.
Well, at least with
They
our
made 'em feel
grandfather.
that way.
Because they made us feel that way.
So making yourself and your family a priority is how you stay connected, even through this. It's incredible. So both of you are moms now. Congratulations. You have a beautiful baby girl, chubby, so cute. What do you hope your children learn about sisterhood? What do you want to teach them? I mean, you've mentioned what was taught to you, but what do you want to teach them and want them to know about sisterhood?
Well, I'll talk about Mila since she's here, right there. When Poppy was a new baby, Mila and I and Poppy and their dad, Henry, we were driving. And all of a sudden, Mila looks at her baby sister and she goes, "Mommy, Poppy's going to rule the world." First of all, that's all I want. You know, I want my kids to be the type of kids that lift each other up, but also lift up their friends, lift up strangers. That's all that matters. And I said, well, Mila, maybe Poppy could be president. Maybe she could actually at least rule the country. Maybe she could be president. And Mila looked at me and she goes, "No, Mommy, all presidents are men."
Uh-oh.
First of all, I was like, Henry, we have got to put her in gifted and talented. She knows history. She's a genius. And then Henry reminded me that she'd met two presidents that were men, so, you know, could have it skewed. But I thought, like, that's not what we want for our girls. You know, we've got to change that, first of all. But also, at least one woman clapped. Joe, this is a room full of women.
Let's all give that a round of applause. Yes.
Jeez Louise, when did Texas get... Come on, y'all. But second of all, that's what I want, you know? I want my kids to feel empowered. But I don't want just my kids who have, you know, the luckiest draw in the world with a family that loves them so much. I want all kids to feel like that. Sissy, go. I feel like I'm going to break down. It's your turn.
Well, so my little babe is only 6 months, so we're just working on the basics right now.
She already knows sight words, right?
Yeah. She's obviously a genius. She, too, really likes to eat and sleep. We have a lot in common. But, well, what I want is something that was talked, I mean, a number of things. I think what is remarkable about humans and about kids is that we're each uniquely individual and we're each great at totally different things. Mm-hmm. And how fabulous. Then we get to learn. Our lives are only bigger the more people that we're with, because we can learn from our friends and they can be great at something and we can be great at something and we don't need to be the same. And I love uniqueness. And I know that can be uncomfortable when you're a little girl, but it's, to me, spectacular. Mm-hmm. And so I want that for my daughter. But the other thing, I remember so deeply when I was little thinking that I could change the world. I just remember I was convinced I could change the world.
And you have.
Well, I don't know that I have.
Yes, you have.
But I remember, like whipping our elementary school into having a recycling program. And like, when you're little, you believe you can do anything. Right. And I was reminded about that by the books that were of these different ordinary, extraordinary people that are leaders for kids. And I want my daughter, I want to maintain that belief in her, and not for her to get cynical, but for her to love the world and love other people and believe that every day she can try to make it better in whatever her unique, special way is.
I think about... I think about all the time, as busy moms, sometimes I don't know if it happens to you, but it's hard to sit and get lost in a book nowadays. And
not for me.
No? Okay. Well, I find myself feeling a little guilty sometimes of having revert to Audible because, it's on the go and you're traveling. And I want to sit and get lost in books. And I want my kids to see me reading. Because I feel like if they see you reading, they'll do it too and they'll love it. And then getting them away from devices and things like that we all struggle with is also a challenge now. It's something that we maybe didn't have to deal with, when we were younger. But what that you've learned as a child of what your mom and what your grandmother and other members of your family have taught you, are you teaching your kids to keep them motivated to read? And what can we do to help teach our nieces and nephews, our children, our grandkids to stay motivated to read?
We got to hang out with Ann Patchett, who's one of my favorite writers, the other night. And she said, and I'm not actually sure that this is research proved, so proven.
Take it with a grain of
Take
salt.
it with a grain of salt, because I've never done the research afterwards. She says she believes that by modeling reading for your children, you're actually doing more than reading to them. Mila, Poppy, and I read, and Hal gets read to too, but we kind of split up. I have the two girls, Henry has the boy. There's no reason for that, don't worry. But we're reading the Harry Potters, and those moments, and the little twin bunk bed in New York City where you can hear the cars honking, I know will be some of my happiest moments of my life. And so, first of all, I love it. And I think if you're constantly shouting out about great writers, and I started a book club at the Today Show, which I love, and its whole mission is to amplify the voices of debut or diverse authors. And I'm so fulfilled, and I know my Ganny would have loved it because she loved a book recommendation. And so I think just read yourself, and then also don't let those little moments of the in-between of reading to your kids or your grandkids go because you're too busy looking at your phone. Take those precious moments, because I feel like it's easy to say, get the kids off the devices, but we're the ones that are on them too.
Yeah.
We love to read because our grandparents and parents love to read. That's why we love to read, because every night before bed, and still to this day, our parents read. They get in bed and they read before they go to bed. So we thought that's like just you do that. You brush your teeth,
it's a
you
habit,
get in your bed and you read. And
that's what my kids do. Mila every night is right. Mila, what are you reading now?
Harry
Potter. Every night she brushes her teeth, she gets in her bed, and she reads.
Yeah. And I have found that reading also with your kids, if they're not as motivated, and reading to them really helps them get into it too, because I usually have to sign like a 15-minute waiver, she read for 15 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever. And, I've been guilty of it. Okay, you sign it. When I read to her and read with her, I could just see her more engaged. So that's some great advice. I want to ask you a little more about your family and just some of the life lessons that you've learned throughout life that you think about the most, whether it's your grandparents or your parents or someone in your family. Maybe some life lessons that you carry with you, you cherish, and you think about the most.
We could talk for
I'm sure y'all are hungry, so we're not going to talk for that long, but do you want to talk about
Yes. Well, Jen and I were lucky in that we had 3 of our grandparents in our life until we were 36 years old. We lost all 3 in the same year, and what an incredible gift to have them.
Yes.
And I have 2 thoughts. Growing up with the name Barbara Bush was incredibly awkward. And
we said to my mom, didn't you think that might be hard for a tiny little kid in Texas to be called Barbara Bush? And she was like, well, we didn't know she was going to be first lady. And we were like, Mom, she was the vice president's wife when we were born.
There's
Remember
usually
one, there's
step
only other
you
one
wanna
place
take.
to go.
There's usually one other, you want to
Vice
climb
President,
that one step to the ladder.
Yep.
But anyway, obviously I'm grateful for my name, but everyone thought I was prank calling them. If I ordered a pizza, I got hung up on.
Oh, man.
It was just...
I will never forget one of the first days we went to Austin High School, this big public high school, and they were like, Barbara Bush, and all these boys started laughing, and I was like, oh, no.
I was like,
That's really you, yeah.
But I then the night that my grandmother passed away, I was laying in bed, and even though, of course, we were expecting her to pass away, it still came as such a devastating shock. And we were just so sad. And I remember thinking then, I felt ashamed that I had been embarrassed by my name. And then I was thinking, well, at least now I have my whole life to have this name. Yeah. And it's a reminder to live authentically the way that she did. What you saw was what you got, as we saw in that video. And to be brave. I mean, she chose hospice care at the end of her life. She wanted to die authentically. She didn't want to be without her family or somewhere where she wasn't herself. She was completely authentic in everything that she did. And I just thought that night, well, now I have this reminder to also be brave and to also be authentic. And she showed all of us how to do that. So there's that thought. And then in addition, our grandmother passed away before our grandfather did. And for whatever reason, we weren't expecting that. And our grandfather went to Maine that summer. And at the beginning of the summer, we had all thought he would be there with our grandmother. And I had the luxury of, I could take a few weeks off of work. So I went to Maine with him by myself for the first few weeks before then the rest of the family came up. And every day he would lie on his bed. It was similar to a previous tale told. And I would read him the love letters that he had written to my grandmother from the war that she had saved. And I learned all these things about him. He was good at everything, but humility was so important. So he was baseball captain, basketball captain, soccer captain. We never knew any of these things. And he was so worried in the letters. Two things. He was worried my grandmother was going to blow him off. So he would write to his mother saying he was worried Barbara was going to give him the fluff. But he had lied about how old he was to go into war. And he was worried his mom, in every letter he was saying, Mom, don't tell any of your friends how old I actually am. Because he was younger than needed to be enlisted. And so I would read him these letters, and I'd think he was going to doze off. And his eyes would close, and I'd kind of get up to sneak out, and he'd go, continue. And so I'd keep reading him these letters. And I just learned so much more about him. I think we all have. The beauty of grieving someone publicly is you learn all these things from other people. And because he was so humble, we never would have known all of the things that he did with his life. And he was so humble, and he chose to lead with love. And he was so gentle, and we don't usually think about love and gentleness as leadership skills. And yet they're the perfect leadership skills.
No, absolutely. Congratulations, ladies, on this
Thank
new
you
book,
so much.
The Superpower Sisterhood.
Thank you, Uncle Neil, for having us. Thank Neil and Maria. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Yeah, congratulations. Thank you.
Now, please welcome the mother of our only granddaughter, baby Addie, who celebrates her first birthday today, the very talented Sarah Beth Bush.
Good evening. Our next and final best-selling author is an internationally acclaimed speaker and former award-winning journalist. He has also spent over 2 decades teaching at various colleges, including Texas A&M University. His podcast, How You Livin', encourages, challenges, and empowers people at every level to dream bigger, to stretch beyond their comfort zones, and to achieve the impossible. As Rick says, most people I meet are asking themselves the same unrelenting question: I wonder how great I can actually be. Here to inspire us from his book, Lessons from a Third Grade Dropout, please join me in a warm Texas welcome for Dr. Rick Rigsby.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Sarah Beth, thank you so very much. And my heart is just filled this evening. First of all, thank you to the Bush family. We all have one thing in common in this room. We love the Bush family. Dr. Fink, you and your staff are just absolutely amazing. Neil and Maria, thank you so very much for chairing this event and for being the people that y'all are. I just so appreciate it. It has also been awesome to share the stage with such gifted authors. I'll tell you, Alifair, you are just an amazing person and a gifted writer, and I just have enjoyed getting to know you. I really have. And Brad, I can say the same about you. I think our talk about our families this afternoon just really blessed me and encouraged me. And you're just a great writer and an even better person. And then how about those twins, everyone? I said, how about those twins, everybody? I have 200 engagements all over the world, and I try to watch the Today Show every single morning. I do. And this past Tuesday, Barbara knocked it out the park in the 4th hour. Did y'all see that? And how about Jenna, right? In fact, it's so neat because you get to watch their kids come into the world. You get to watch them grow up. We got to welcome Cora, Georgia, I believe, a few months ago. But I want to take you back about a year, I think. I'm getting ready to speak to a couple thousand people, so I'm going through my prep. The ballroom is right downstairs, and so I just have to go right down the elevator, and I'm getting ready to put my game face on. But I want to wait and watch this story, because to celebrate her Gampy's birthday, Jenna is going to jump out of an airplane. Did any of you remember that? As a professor at Texas A&M, we would watch President Bush parachute out every few years to honor those men that didn't make it when he was shot down. And Jenna is going to follow in her grandfather's footsteps. And so she's got her safe word, I believe it was Hoda, and she goes, Hoda, 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 which is better than the alternative. And I'm crying like a baby. I think all of America was crying. I remember going on the stage going, hello, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so glad to be here and see you. But I just saw the tremendous respect and honor that she had for her grandparents in that one single moment. I'm proud of these grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and not only President Bush, but Mrs. Bush's legacy that continues to live in them. I really am. And it's such an honor for me to be here. I am the least likeliest of authors to be here. I really am. And I'll explain that to you in the 4 hours that I have to share with you. My connection with the Bush family began in the 1990s. I was so privileged to be a professor at Texas A&M University. I was a former television reporter. And then I went back to school to look at the way in which the media attempts to construct reality in society. And so when we found out that President Bush, 41, was building his library at Texas A&M, several academic units were able to give representatives from those disciplines an opportunity to be part of the Bush faculty. And I was a part of the faculty from the Department of Communication that looked at the relationship between the media and the White House. And it was absolutely awesome. I got to meet President and Mrs. Bush on several occasions in that particular space. But I really got to talk with President Bush because I was also R.C. Slocum's chaplain and life skills coach. Coach Slocum is a dear friend of mine. I know many of you know him in here. And being on his coaching staff had a lot of perks. At the top of the list was this one. In order for President Bush to get to his private suite, his secure suite at Kyle Field, he had to go through the coach's locker room. And so here we are preparing for games. We're not completely dressed. We're not hardly dressed at all. And the next thing you see are Secret Service folks, and you know what's coming. And so we had this wonderful chance on a number of occasions to talk to President Bush, but to listen to President Bush talk about sports, especially football, especially our defense or our recruiting, and it just created this unbelievable bond. I remember, speaking of bonds, we had a small infant son. I want to say it was probably 1999. I think Zachary was about 6 months old. And I have seen my wife in a variety of settings, and I've never seen her more moved by anyone than this one moment. Because he was small and because we had other small children, we would go to restaurants during the off hours. This particular time, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We went to that Michelin star restaurant in College Station known as Outback. And so we are there. All of a sudden, we see the Secret Service come, and we know what's about to happen, right? And there come Mr. and Mrs. Bush in. And so I walk over and say hello to President Bush. We start talking football. Mrs. Bush sees my wife with Zachary in her arms and says, "George, would you look at that boy?" He went, "Yeah." Now, the 3-4 defense, Rick, what are we going to do? Mrs. Bush then said, "May I?" And she held Zach in her arms. And I looked at Janet, and I've never seen Janet so moved. And she just cradled little Zachary. You know, that's why I think my favorite picture in Barbara Bush, A Memoir, is when she cradled that little brown baby who was dying of AIDS, who would 2 weeks later pass away. That's the essence of Barbara Bush. The essence of Barbara Bush is that she would go to the least of these. Are y'all hearing what I'm saying to you tonight? That is a quality that very few people possess that we ought to be grateful for. You know, I think that the Bush family and the Rigsby family are very similar with a few glaring exceptions. That's funny. But But think about this. I think about the Rigsby family. I think about the Bush family. But look at the values that connect us. Our faith, our love of family, our service to others. These values I learned from my mother and father. My mother is from Oklahoma, quoting Henry Ford her whole life. "Ricky, if you think you can or if you think you can't, you're right." A third-grade dropout daddy from Huntsville, Texas, quoting Michelangelo. "Ricky, yes, Daddy. Ricky, I'm not going to have a problem if you aim high and miss, but I'm going to have a real issue if you aim low and hit." This third-grade dropout from Huntsville meets this country woman from Oklahoma in a little town called San Francisco, California in the 1950s. They get married and start their family. I'm the oldest of the lot. My daddy gets a job as a cook, a simple cook. At the height of his career, he's bringing home $500 a month, but that does not define his impact. I wasn't thinking book back then. I'm listening to my father talk and talk and talk about these values. My goal wasn't to be a best-selling author. My goal was to figure out a way not to hear my father share these values every day. My book begins in the unlikeliest of places. Here's the launching pad. I mentioned that I met Coach Slocum. I became his life skills coach, a character coach. We have these young men for a period of time. And Coach Slocum said, I want to challenge these young men to be great men. He said, the problem is we want them to be men, and many of them have not seen men. How can they be something they've never seen? And so, Rick, I want you to challenge them to be men of character, men of integrity. I said, Coach, I know just what you are looking for. I said, I had a father that taught me some lessons that I think I can turn into the kind of curriculum that will build these young men. These lessons from a third-grade dropout for 15 years served our football team. Simple lessons from a third-grade dropout. Lessons like, son, you'd rather be an hour early than a minute late. My father had the breakfast and lunch shift. He had to arrive at California Maritime Academy. That's where he was a cook. He arrived at California Maritime Academy every morning at 3:45. He wasn't supposed to start until 5 o'clock. He arrived an hour early. You know the lesson I learned from that man? The lesson I learned was this: always inconvenience yourself for the sake of others. Is that not George Bush? Is that not Barbara Bush? Come on, somebody, help me. My father was a simple cook, just a simple cook, but he was a cook at this academy that trained men and women to go into the maritime business. That meant he had to travel and sail all over the world. This third grade dropout sailed the world 10 times over in a 30-year career. I have 4 degrees. My brother is a presidential appointed judge, appointed by your dad in Washington, D.C. We weren't the smartest ones in our family. The third grade dropout daddy, a country mother from Oklahoma, placing a demand upon us with lessons like these. Don't judge anyone. Is that not Barbara Bush? Son, don't judge. Son, I've been all over the world. I've seen good and bad in every shade. You won't impact somebody if you're judging them. Isn't that awesome? Oh, as a little side note that I think would be a delight to Mrs. Bush tonight, I was in 3rd grade chasing girls every single day in class. It resulted in me staying after school on numerous occasions. One day in 3rd grade, around 1963, my 3rd grade teacher, Mrs. Heyman, instead of judging me and labeling me a troublemaker, said these words: "Ricky, it's obvious you have a gift. And Mrs. Heyman is going to teach you when it's appropriate to exercise that gift." And then she did something that changed my life. She handed me a book, and she said, "This is what I want you to do during your period after school today. Read the first chapter and you may go home." I read 3 chapters on my own that day. It changed my life. As a matter of fact, the author became one of my heroes in life, Beverly Clary. Mrs. Clary just died last year in March, right at 104 years old in Carmel. For those of you that don't know, Mrs. Clary was a librarian in Portland, Oregon, but noticed that her students weren't connecting with the characters in the book. So she wrote her first book in 1950, the one I read that day in 1963, titled simply Henry Huggins. I went on and read Henry and the Paper Route. I went on and read Henry and Beezus and Ramona. Because a 3rd grade teacher didn't judge me, but found something to pull out of me, I have a vociferous appetite for knowledge today and a rather efficacious vocabulary. After that sentence, if you don't give, you don't have a heartbeat. Reading had always been part of our lives, but Mrs. Heyman really spurred it on. She really did. And so I started not to write a book, but to prepare character lessons for young football players, because football wasn't the ultimate goal. Being great men became the ultimate goal, and that was really, really important. A few years later, in 2004, a publisher thought it was a good idea to put these lessons into print. In 2006, I published Lessons from a 3rd Grade Dropout. Here are the lessons. Not only to not judge, not only to be early, but son, be kind. Let me hit the pause button. When I was growing up, kindness was a value. Today, it seems like kindness is a commodity that we barter to get what we think we might need to appease the sensibilities of people we don't even know. I don't need to remind this audience that kindness never goes out of style. It never goes out of style. A simple lesson from a 3rd grade dropout daddy from Huntsville, Texas. Here's one. Son, make sure your servant's towel is bigger than your ego. It was said by that famous philosopher Anonymous that ego is the anesthesia that deadens the pain of stupidity. I was teaching a rhetorical theory class at A&M, and I said, according to that famous philosopher Anonymous, ego is the anesthesia that deadens the pain of stupidity. And right on cue, one of my students raised his hand, said, Dr. Rigsby, Anonymous, is that a Greek philosopher or a Roman? I love my Aggies, y'all. I love them. Here's a lesson. Now, forget about the fact that there may be a grammatical faux pas in this and just get the point. Son, if you're going to do a job, do it right. I know it ought to be do it well, but I knew exactly what my father meant. Simple, simple lessons. How you do anything, son, is how you do everything. Son, it's never wrong to do the right thing. But he saved his greatest lesson for my worst day. I wrote about these lessons in this book. This book lay dormant for years. It was on HarperCollins' dead list until I give this speech at California Maritime Academy, the very place where my father was a cook. I gave this speech in 2017. That speech now has 300 million views. I'm in a cap and a gown. And the book became a bestseller overnight. Isn't that something? I think the lesson there is that if you have a book, you write it and trust God to do the rest. It'll be published right when it's supposed to be published, right? He saved his greatest lesson for my worst day. A quick backstory. I married the most beautiful woman I've ever met in my life. I wasn't supposed to do that because linemen don't have a chance to do anything like that, but you know, the blind side hadn't come out yet. And it was a fairy tale. I mean, it was an absolute fairy tale. She was a registered nurse. I was a television reporter in Northern California. We were blessed with a couple of children. And she decided to leave the nursing profession, homeschool the children, but then start volunteering in their various libraries as a volunteer aide in the library. We moved from California to Texas. She would read every night to our little boys and to me a book titled A Paradise Called Texas, about the Germans coming over, establishing communities in the hill country. I was just as moved as the kids. Our kids are great readers. I love reading. She continued to read. She found a lump along the way in her left breast. She was diagnosed with breast cancer, but she kept reading. She kept reading. As a matter of fact, even in between treatments, she was so weak, I would take her rocking chair to the campus over there at Brazos Christian School in Bryan, Texas, and place it in her library so she would read to the students with a little bit more ease. She eventually became the librarian, and she got sicker and sicker. And then in 1996, me and my two little boys walked up to Mommy's casket. I looked all around the funeral home. That's an interesting place to learn a lesson, but it was a life-changing lesson. Everyone is crying. My mom's crying. Everyone's crying. I'm clutching the hands of two little boys. And I remember looking at that third grade dropout. And I said, Daddy, I've lost hope. I've lost hope. Listen to the wisdom of this man. Son, you can't lose something God gave you. You haven't lost hope, you've lost perspective. Now, son, just stand. Do y'all know that I go all over the world and I encourage people to not quit, to not give up, to keep standing, to make something out of themselves. That is the book titled Lessons from a Third Grade Dropout. You know what my greatest assignment is every year? I get to do a lot of things and go a lot of places, but here's my greatest assignment. Once a year, I go to that little small campus in Bryan, Texas, Brazos Christian School, and there is a group of students who have assembled in the library, and I pull out Henry Huggins, and I read to the students at the Trina L. Rigsby Memorial Library. It's the greatest assignment that I have. So I kept standing. I kept standing. You're not going to believe what happened. 2 years later, I fall in love with the finest woman I've ever met in my life again. A single school teacher from Bryan, Texas. The first thing Janet did after we got married was she adopted my little boys, fulfilling Trina's last wish that her babies not go through life without a mommy. Then we had more children. Look at our family. We're doing our part for racial reconciliation. Come on, somebody. Come on. Come on, y'all. While this picture is on the screen, let me just say this. I have nothing to do with that picture. I don't. That picture is the legacy. Listen carefully. That picture is the legacy of a third-grade dropout daddy who placed a demand upon his son on the worst day of his son's life and said, son, don't quit. You keep going. You keep standing. It makes me ask this question, what will all of our legacies look like one day? You know, it's clear what President Bush's legacy is. It's also clear what Mrs. Bush's legacy is. President Bush stood on his faith, and he stood on that solid rock called Barbara Bush. Barbara Bush stood, and just like that third-grade dropout, Barbara Bush made an impact. And she communicated to everyone around her that regardless of who you are, regardless of where you come from, regardless of what you have or don't have, you can make an impact. Even a third-grade dropout, hardly known outside of his family, is now being quoted on every continent throughout the world. I close with this, y'all. I want to encourage you to not just work on your legacy, but take a cue from Barbara Bush. You see, legacy is how you want to be remembered. But impact is why people will never forget you. You know, about a year after my first wife passed away, my dad got sick, really sick, and he would eventually pass away. And my mother asked me to preach his funeral. And I was hesitant, honored, but hesitant. Because what do you say about the greatest man that you've ever met? And it causes me to end my speech on this night with these words. Make writing your letter of recommendation easy. Make writing your eulogy impossible. God bless y'all.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back Dana Monique and the Ernest Walker Community Singers.
To us and grants to us
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes this portion of our program. Please enjoy your meal.